Welcome back, everybody. We are excited. We're at episode 10. We today on Glam and Grind with Rach
and Julz.
And today we have an exciting announcement. We are going to be talking about Julie's new book. She had her book launch this week, and the Multi-Million Dollar Mompreneur. And we are excited. We're going to talk all about Julie's book and what she's learned and why she wrote it, and learn all the little tips and tricks from her new book, which I'm excited. I ordered. It hasn't come yet, but I can't wait to get it and read more about you. So, Julie, why did you decide, like, of all the things you do, all the things all the time, and now you're like, I think I'm going to write a book? Like, what made you decide to write this book?
So quite a few things, but I'll say the main driving factor. By the way, the release was just this Wednesday, so just a couple days ago. So it's pretty new. I've been working with a lot of PR. We've been running around. But the inspired what I was inspired by to write the book was, I felt like throughout my business journey, I had a lot of times where I wish I would have had the information that I needed at the time that I needed it in. And we can always say, in the past, we look at things and are like, man, we wish we would have, wish we could have. But honestly, for me, a lot of it was access to information. So not only did I not have access to the mentorship that I needed at those times, especially in my first 10 years of business, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but I didn't have the money to access the mentorship that had the information that I needed. So it was like this cyclical disaster of I can't get what I need because I don't have the money, or I couldn't spend the money, or I didn't know to spend the money, like lots of things. And so I just did things that cost me a shit ton of money, a lot of time, put me backwards, all the mistakes, right? So when I kind of made it the second time around, I thought to myself, at one point I want to sit down and just write some things that were really helpful for me, and just talk about my journey, because I wanted it to be inspirational, number one, for other moms, for other young women, for other daughters, of folks that are wanting to do an entrepreneurship journey. And just let them know, it is possible. I was not anything that they were not. I went from a negative $25,000 loan, we'll talk about that in a bit, to selling not once, but twice for 8+ figures, living a life passively now. And so the inspiration was really, I want to be an inspiration, for other women who want to have this similar legacy and similar ending to their entrepreneurial journey. And also because I want to offer people these tidbits, tricks, things that I didn't know when I needed to know them. And I just want to be the access point for some of these things, because if you don't have the money, or you're not where you need to be yet, looking to people outside your circle costs money and is hard to get their access, right? So these tips and tricks hopefully will help them compress their timelines in their entrepreneurial journey by just having some information that was otherwise not readily available to most people outside the circles of those circles, if that makes any sense.
So. Yeah. And I think for me, what's intriguing, if I didn't know you, and I know all the things, but for me as an entrepreneur, as a mom, what's intriguing is that it's you read all of these different books and you get a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there, or you have, like you said, no access, but almost too much access. So too much information. So what's intriguing to me about your book is it's all honed into one package with a bow, because it's you've done it before. You've done the mom thing, you've done the entrepreneur thing, you've bought, you've sold, you've coached, all of that. So it's all in one package. So then it's condensed down to what we need. So that's what's intriguing to me as a consumer of your book.
Yeah, I'm hoping that it provides somewhat of a roadmap, or at least a directional kind of platform for you to grow off of, but just to even give you some insight on all those little pieces and parts of being a mom, being a wife, vertically integrating your marriage to help grow your empire, just all the things that we went through over the span of 30 years, really, right? And so I already, when I finished it and published it, I was like, there really needs to be a part 2 and 3 because there's so much information. It can become overwhelming, right? So the first part, I don't think it has everything in it. I think it literally just scratches the surface on the really basic things you need, initially mindset, right? Like overcoming adversity. Some of the chapters in the book deal with targets and setting targets and talking about like your mindset around money, even, what's an asset, what's a liability, like all the things that I was not thinking about in the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey that could have had a significant impact on the way that that journey propelled itself. So anyways, I don't think it's all in there, but I think that there is a little bit of everything. And so hopefully someone that's reading it will find one nugget that will help them change their life in some way, whether it's their business, relationship with their family, kids, spouse, or, just having financial literacy ideas and tips and tricks that otherwise wouldn't be available if you were just randomly looking, I guess. So.
Yeah, I think that's important, the financial literacy piece of it, because a lot of times people will see like multimillionaire and they think, oh, I'm just going to do this get rich quick scheme. And then maybe they do make a lot of money, but they don't have the financial literacy to back it. So they can't maintain it or make their money work for them. So I think that's interesting to perspective rather than just this inspirational piece. You're actually teaching us to have longevity with our finances, which is more important than getting that get rich quick scheme.
Yeah, and talking about that. So like generationally, both my parents are immigrants. They came from Italy at a really young age. They came on the boat, took forever to get to the US, land of the free, land of opportunity, like why we love it so much being in the US. But I also felt compelled by their journey to continue to just level that journey up and be that first millionaire in our family and offer a trajectory change for our family, right? Be the one that changed that trajectory. My grandparents, I feel, were so risk-taking and so brave to come to this country. You would look at me and you wouldn't know that I have 2 immigrant parents and all the things we came from, but we're Italian, and my parents came when they were in like middle school-ish age, and they didn't speak English. So like just the whole journey of coming to a new country, not speaking the language. My grandparents worked initially in tomato farms, and my grandpa was a siding and roofer. My grandma used to she used to work in it was called the Canada Building in Canada. And it was a lawyer's office. And because my grandpa worked all day and my grandma watched us as my parents worked and other things, she used to bring us sometimes to work. And so my brother and I would hop on a bus downtown with her, and we would hide in the closets in the offices at the lawyer's offices while she cleaned them, because she's like, shh, the boss is here, like go hide, or we would hide under the desks because we're not supposed to be there, right? And so no one is 90-some now, so I think we're clear. But when we were there, just seeing like the hard work that she had to do, my mom working 3 jobs, we were always around a lot of really hard workers. We were brought up to believe hard work equaled, that's what, when you got things, you had to work hard, right?
Success.
Yes. Success equaled like how many hours you're putting in and how much work you can do. So I think it did influence me as well a little bit, like my past and our history of coming from an immigrant family, that like I just knew I wanted more, and the way I was going to get that was by working hard. And so I know that's kind of a two question there, but I do feel like it influenced me for sure, because people ask me all the time, as a daughter of immigrants, like, do you feel that fueled your journey? Absolutely, 100%. I mean, we are who we are genetically, as well as, nature, nurture, right? And I believe like you come from the product of your environment to some degree.
So how did you make that shift? Because you just said like hard work equals success, and you witnessed your grandparents and your parents working hard for someone else. So how did you make that shift to, now I want to start a Montessori preschool on my own and not work for someone else? What made you determine that?
So I think also partly genetic. My grandparents on my dad's side worked in the more laborious, W-2, and my grandpa, both of them came from the World War. So they were prisoners of Hitler and Mussolini, had to walk from Germany to Italy, go through all the things.
Wow.
Why I'm saying that is my grandpa was a barber for, I think it was the army or like the military. So when he came over, he had a trade. And at that time, if you had a trade, you were doing well because you had something you could service people with. So he opened a small barber shop. So my mom's side of the family kind of started this like entrepreneurial, I guess, vibe. My grandma, who at the time, like she never worked or they didn't have a lot of schooling or anything like that. But she thought, well, we're paying all this rent. Let's buy the building that the barbershop is in. So she already had like this, it's kind of like the 100 years before me vibe of like, let's be entrepreneurial. Let's try to own something. Right. And so my mom's family was definitely a little bit better off in terms of like their experience. And then my parents in that building opened, when they got married, they opened a hardware store. It was called Deponio Dominion Hardware. My last name was Deponio. And so they opened this store, and my brother and I grew up in this store, right? So we worked the till, we helped people, we took them around and showed them where to get stuff. And, my mom was always working. My dad was always doing like the paint and blah, blah, blah. And they only had that for a short time because the recession hit. They ended up trying to scale. Everything went haywire. They lost everything. The marriage split up. That's when my mom was a single mom, started working 3 jobs. So I had been through the gamut of like, having, not having, having less, doing the whole thing. But I do believe genetically I had this like thing in me that I just wasn't a good employee. Like I always wanted to figure out how to make it better, how to do things different. Why are we being so inefficient today? This is just a total example. We had to go to a notary for some business stuff on the legal side for our what do you call them? Buildings, real estate. So I'm coming home and Bo knows. He's like, oh, you haven't had lunch yet. Do you want to stop for your ice cream? I love ice cream. If you don't know, I eat ice cream about 1 liter a day, legit. So we have this place called in Elkhorn. Anyways, we have a place that we get ice cream from, which I love. It's my favorite. But I got up there and there was like a pretty big lineup because people go there for lunch. There's like food and blah, blah, blah. So just as an example, and I'm kind of going down a rabbit hole, but there's a purpose. So I get up there, I order my ice cream. It's just like a regular ice cream in a cup. It should take 2 minutes, right? Like I'm like, well, this will be quick. I got to go home. We got to tape with Rach. I get there and I'm waiting and waiting because all the people in front of me had food orders, right? I'm like, wouldn't it be better if they just opened a window for just simple ice cream? Because the efficiency would be people would go in and out so much quicker. They'd have a lot less congestion, right? They'd have more room at the tables because people are just getting ice cream and leaving. Like eating an ice cream is a 5-minute deal. Getting food, doing all that's a half-hour deal. So anyways, I get in the car and I like start to create a plan for efficiency in this place. And I'm like, I'm literally going to talk to them because I feel like this could really help them, right? Nobody asked me for my opinion, Julie. Nobody cares that you have an efficiency plan for them. But when I was working, that's where I went to. Solving problems. How can we solve this? How can we fix this? Let's think out of the box. So I think that was always part of who I was. So I started working for a woman who owned a Montessori school. Before and after, I had come home from Europe. I had done a stint there for athletics and blah, blah, blah. Came home totally broke, owing a shit ton of money to my mom. All the things. When you're in college, that's what you do. Or that's what you're not supposed to do, but you do. And so I came home, had no credit score, right? Like just let's call it, we're starting from very, very scratch. And so had a lot of crazy jobs, like worked at the Heavenly Rest Cemetery. So I was digging graves. I was landscaping.
What in the world?
Oh, girl, it's all in the book. Yeah. So I had a job. First, I had a job with the city landscaping, like cutting grass and stuff. So I was like, this is awesome. I was getting super like muscles and tanned. And I was like, this is a great job and a lot of money. So I bought my first car, did all the things, that you're not supposed to do, buy all these liabilities. But I was making good money. Then that's a 2-year lottery. Well, the following year, I was like, man, what am I going to do? So landscaping job came up at the cemetery. I'm like, how peaceful. I'm going to like take care of the flowers. And they had us like marking graves, digging the top layers of the graves, cleaning the
Wow.
bones. Like I was like, whoa. Okay. But anyways, it was very peaceful. But so I've done a lot of whatever jobs it took. Going back to Montessori, I was working before and after school while I was going to law school. I did not like law school, but if you're an Italian immigrant, you're going to be a lawyer, a doctor, or an accountant, because you need to make money and not, and not be stuck in this situation. So I was working in before and after. I fell in love with Montessori. I was like, OMG, this is amazing. If I have kids at some point, I really want to be able to afford to put them in Montessori. Then I started thinking, if I only had Montessori myself, I would be so much smarter. Like I was watching these kids do math, and I struggled with math my entire life. And I'm a multimillionaire. I literally struggled with math. I failed 2 or 3 times in high school, my math course. Like I had a hard time around conceptualizing things that weren't there. So non-concrete information,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
I was going to say making the abstract concrete. That's also what I struggled with. Yeah.
That was huge for me. And so when I saw these kids doing like the Pythagorean theorem on a board and learning how to do like division with remainders and these test tubes, and it was like, so it was all coming clear to me, like, what? I was like 20 some years old, and I thought, man, no, this like should be offered to every kid that can absolutely have access to this. So that was the first thought I had. Then I started doing tours for her when she was gone, because I started kind of running the classroom and I got really good with the materials. I started doing some Montessori training. I quit law school. That was a whole thing in my life, against everybody's will and against everybody's direction. And I started teaching, and I loved it. And then I was so good at the parents and the kids and the creating the connections, and her school was growing and growing. And I was like, why am I doing all this for someone else? And so in the summer, most Montessori schools close. I don't know if that's kind of been I'm talking in the past, like 30 years.
Yeah.
So then I opened a school in the basement of my mom's house in the hood, basically in our home that we grew up in. So these, middle to higher income kiddos that were going to Montessori came all the way on the other side of town to my house in the summer. Parents loved it. Behind my house was a public park and a cemetery that we played in for recess, like legit. And we made it all work with homemade Montessori materials in the basement of my mom's house. And so I made all the things I could with dollar store materials. I had no money, right? So I was just scrounging to use whatever they paid me for tuition, for like the food for their lunches and the materials. But it was super fun. And then my mom's like, you need to get out of here. Like, this is a huge liability. We have no insurance for all these kids.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing here? And so I applied to be in the basement of the church. But so that's a very long answer to your question, Rach. But I guess a lot of things, right, had me go that route. And so, I ended up starting in the basement of the church with a $25,000 loan. I saw an ad in the paper because I didn't have any money. And so I read this ad in the paper that said, if you need money, come and see me. There's a guy named Malcolm Banks, who now I figure that probably was not his real name. But anyways, that's a whole other story. And Bo and I went down there because I was afraid to go by myself. And we went down this alley. It was across McDonald's in this really scary kind of like our downtown at the time. It's like not a business building or anything. Opened this burgundy door. There was like a light, like think of Stephen King, this light kind of swishing around, and this crickety table. And he was like, okay, are you ready, kind of thing? And we were like, oh yeah, I need this 25 grand. And he said to Bo, I hope you love this girl, because if she doesn't pay, like, we're coming for you. So I had a lot of pressure just to perform, right? And so he kind of looked at me like, what the heck? Like, you want to do this, And so anyways, we signed the loan, got the money. I bought with 25,000. It bought me the furniture and all the Montessori materials. And I started in the basement of the church, but we only had 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. rent. So I had to bring all the things out on wheels, set up all the classrooms, bring them all back at night, mop all those floors. So Bo would quickly run home from his internship he was doing for his PhD, for his doctorate, come and mop the floor so we would get ready for like the karate or, whoever was coming in. So oftentimes we also used Bo's payroll checks, and I'd have him run home at lunchtime so we could pay our teachers at like 1 o'clock. So that's the beginning of all the things that happened. So
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 crazy. So
yeah.
now you are living the American dream, and you were a daughter of immigrants and born and raised in Canada. So how did capitalism and the free market factor into your desire of becoming an American citizen?
Yeah. So after I sold the first set of schools in Canada, which took me a good 10 years to create. So we grew fully organically. I didn't have anything in place for scaling. Like I did all the mistakes in that first 10-year. The first 10 years, I feel like if you don't know what you're doing, are the longest 10 years. You make so many mistakes. But we did sell to private equity in 2011, but I sold with a non-compete in Canada, which that's a whole other thing. If you're going to sell your businesses, be very careful about what you think you'll want to do after that. Everyone says, I don't want to go back. I'll never own another business like mine, blah, blah, blah. And the first thing you do when you quit is you're not prepared for the transition. You don't know what you're going to do with yourself. I was like lost. I went through a grief period of mourning my business. I was like, what's my purpose? I'm a mom. I'm now baking muffins all day. I used to have 300 emails a day. It's a very huge transition, right? I was going to the gym. I was driving everyone crazy. Bo's like, man, you got to get a job or something. Like you're killing us over here, right? So, and I agree. I probably was because I'm a little bit gifted with the hyper focused situation. So I get really crazy about stuff. So anyways, he was like, yeah, let's figure this out. So what happened was, because I had a non-compete in all of Canada, I started looking across from us. So we lived on the border of Michigan and Canada. So Detroit was across we call it across the creek, but it was across the river from us. So I started looking for schools in Detroit, in Ohio, in Chicago, like all the places around us. But it was 2011. Like we had gone through a big economic recession, not much before that. It wasn't really like, it didn't pick up yet, right? And so there was nothing really coming across our desk. And then I got this broker sent me these schools in Omaha, Nebraska. And I was like, why not? Like, sounds like a nice place. Got on the plane, went and visited, met with LaVon, who was a little 80-some-year-old woman who had these schools. She was feisty and really, she was so spry, and she had the same Montessori training as me in Michigan. So we had the same teachers. It was just all weird. It all kind of lined up. I felt like it was somewhat manifested, and she wanted someone to take her legacy. And so I was challenged in Canada because we didn't have the opportunities we had in the US as business owners. There wasn't the opportunity for tax savings, for all these things that the US has in place for us as business owners to be able to take advantage of. In Canada, although I love Canada for different reasons, for business, it's very challenging. And anyone that lives in Canada will tell you that. The taxes are really high. It is socialist, so we pay a lot of healthcare fees, OHIP, like all kinds of stuff that we as business owners put in. And it becomes a challenge to have write-offs for taxes and things like we do here. Like, for example, they don't have 1031s. We're not able to reduce taxes by purchasing, multifamily, things like that. There's just not those options. And so long story short, I fell in love with these little schools. I thought, oh my gosh, I could totally like add on to them, add value, bring the quality. Because she was older and she hadn't done much, and there was no social media. There wasn't even a the website was, let's just call it, there wasn't a website. So there's not a lot of, next century stuff. So so a few things. Obviously, I've always been attracted to the US for the land of the free and opportunity, right? And Bo was American because he was Hawaiian. So he already had American citizenship. He was American Canadian because his mom was Hawaiian, dad Canadian. So my kids were dual already, which made it really nice. I was the only one that didn't have any American status. So I came over as an EB2 visa holder. So I did not come over via Bo because he would have had to been here to bring us over, right? Like, I mean, he already had his stuff, but for me. So we consulted with an attorney, and he was like, if you want to buy these schools, just buy them, buy them yourself, come in as a visa holder, as an investor. So I was like, perfect, we'll do that. So went through the whole process, got denied. They were like, we're not letting you into the US. You are not worthy. So that sucked. And then I was really upset. And I had already put these schools under contract. So I was like, oh my gosh, went back, pled my case, spent a bunch of money, and then I was accepted into the US. So anyways, that happened. And then I commuted every Monday through Thursday. So I left the kids. So whatever schools I was going to purchase had to be enough EBITDA and enough worth for me to make that trek. Because leaving your family, that's a whole other thing about balance and entrepreneurship we can chat about. But it had to be worth my while, that there would be a return on life for my family to do this. And we can talk about that too.
That right now.
We're doing right now, right? And so, but why I did that as well was because I saw that there was an opportunity, right? There was this value add opportunity. And Beau had a huge practice in Canada at this point. So he was like working all day. I was going back and forth. It was super stressful. It was stressful on our life, on our kids. So he was crying every night when I would leave. I still like relive it all, right? But I knew that at the end of it, there was going to be hopefully a purpose for all this, and we'd all be together and it would all work out. So I commuted. And then in 2019, I said, you know what? I think I'm going to have to increase my ability basically to have a, sorry, Beau just walked in. I was like, who's dinging all these doors? So I said, I have to increase. Like I had a lot more opportunities coming up in that area. So it's like you bought these schools in Utah. So you bought a schools, right? But if other schools came up, we're already there, right? So I started to acquire all these other schools in and around Omaha, Nebraska. So, but I said to Beau, if I'm going to do this, I need to be here full time. Like now we have, 6, 7, 8, 9, like I can't just do 4 days. I need to be there full time. And I was there full time every time we opened a new one. So it started to get to be where I was really away from home more than I wanted to be. And so we had to come to a conclusion. And so, so we sold Beau's practice. I mean, he dissipated all that and had transfers for his patients and all that. We sold our big, beautiful, home that we had worked forever for and thought this was going to be our, forever home. And just had finished renovating all the things in that forever home. Moved to Omaha, Nebraska in a tiny little house and started over. And just so you know too, Rach, I don't know if I've ever talked about this with you. When we came, because I wasn't American, I had no credit. 0. So I ran the schools with no credit for the first 2 years. I went to Banana Republic one weekend. I was here and I needed to get some suits for a meeting I was having coming up. And I got denied. I got denied for a Banana Republic credit card. And I almost cried in the store. Like I left. I had made it. And what am I doing?
Yeah.
And so just like the trials and tribulations, that you go through as a business owner, it's constant. Like people are like, oh, but it's so, you're so lucky and you're this and you're that. Like they have no idea what we go through to get to where we're at. And I also want people to know, like, I am not an overnight success. This is not an overnight situation. It is possible. I got here from nothing. But you absolutely need, it's a constant grind. Like there wasn't a lot of glam back then. So yeah.
But it's also what people don't see. I mean, this is a little bit off topic, but it's what people don't see when you're on the quest to growth. And we've talked about this before, but this reminded me of it, is the peaks and valleys. I am in a valley right now because when you're scaling, you have these peaks and then you scale and you're like you just said, I had made it and then I couldn't even get a credit card. And you hit these valleys and it might be credit. It might be that you've just spent your life savings on scaling. It might be that you needing to spend more money on adding key people to your team. So you're investing in that to get to the next level. There's different things that happen as you scale and as you move up that people don't see. Nobody sees that behind the scenes stuff that's happening.
Right. 1000%. And like when I teach in Wealth Masters about peaks and valleys of death, like that's what we're talking about. Exactly those things, that you have some really high times and then you have some really low times. And sometimes the low times last longer than you want, and maybe you think, and it could be financially, people, execution, strategy, cash. There's numerous reasons that this could put
Family,
everything, right?
that you hit that valley of death with your family, with your relationship, that's real too.
Yeah, all of it. I mean, and
Friends, like you don't have any friends anymore because you're at this different level and you do
mhm.
things differently than the people that you used to hang out with. So now you're like, who am I? Who are my people? Because my people aren't the same people that used to be my people. Those are
No, and
just different valleys that we hit.
we were talking today. It's funny, both Rach and I both posted the same sort of meme or whatever comment quote we saw this morning, and it said, "It's okay to live a life others don't understand," because we both feel like we've been living that life. Like we constantly, if you're leveling up, you're changing friend groups, you're changing people who are around you, because if you know anything about growth in life, if you stay with the people that you've always been with and you stay in the situations you've always been in, you're never going to grow, because there's nobody there that you're looking towards being, right? So they're always saying to find people, friends, mentors that are at least 5 years ahead of where you want to be. So I just read this whole article today about, hey, if you're looking for somebody that is at $100 million and you're at like 50, that's too far, right? Look for someone that's at like 60 or 70, then look at 75, then look at 90, then look at 100 million. But look about 5 years ahead of your growth schedule, which I've never really thought about it, but I've always done that.
Yeah.
I've always looked ahead like, hey, I want to be where she's at, or I want to be where he's at. Like if he's able to do this and own apartment buildings and do that to eradicate income, I want to do this. Like, how can I do this? So finding that person that's 5 years ahead of you that has actually done what you want to do. That's the biggest and best mentorship that you can have, and make sure that that person has a coach. Because if that person doesn't have a coach, that person is not growing, right? And so when you're talking about friends,
a coach that knows more than they do and has done more than they do, because that's also a mistake that people make. Like they find a coach that's very influential, but really dig deep. I've interviewed several coaches for me to have, and when I find out more about their story and what they've actually done, I'm like, but I've done more than that. So how are you going to coach me? So that's important too.
And then you chose me.
Yes, of course.
So like, it's funny because how things happen, like even where your husband is and my husband, like there's a lot of things that are aligning synergetically, like outside of that. But absolutely, like I'm not going to look for someone who was where I was 5 years ago. That's not helping me, right? I feel like I can look for my mentor's Grant Cardone. He is way ahead of me, right? And I'm constantly like I do one-on-ones with him. I have other mentorships that I follow and look towards, and there's other people that are influential, but if they haven't done what I want to do, then it's not worth putting the time and effort in, because you're not going to get the goal that you want. You're not going to get that end game that you want. So also talking about all the things we go through, like you mentioned, families, like all the things. I really truly believe that all that adversity that happened to me, like my parents divorcing, all the adversity that I've gone through in my own life, I truly believe that was a huge indicator and a push for me to continually level up and do better. And I believe that the adversity brought me the abundance I have today, 1000%. And we've talked about that, Rach. Like you can talk about it too, but all the things that the trauma, all the stuff that you have in your past, as long as you don't stay stuck in it, right? Like that is the big lesson for me, for folks. Adversity can make you who you are, but it can also destroy who you want to become. So you have to be very cognizant to change your mindset about money, change your mindset about people, change your mindset about growth. You can mention a little bit about how you feel about that too, Rachel, but I think it's a huge, important just thing to think about,
Yeah, I was actually going to go into that because I think what we are struggling with as far as friendships and certain people on your team and things like that as you grow, the right people on your team, is that whole power of cultivating an abundance mindset and also spreading that abundance mindset. Like, we can't be around people that don't have that abundance mindset, because the minute that it starts to spiral to like, it's all about me, then that person is going to be halted. They're also going to halt your growth as well. So I've had to really train myself as I'm growing to think it's not about me. It's about other people and how we're going to help each other get there. And there's enough for everybody. Like you said, an abundance mindset. Like
Yeah.
there's enough for everybody. So how
So,
are you sharing
mhm.
that with others?
So for me, I have always and will continue to be about collaboration over competition, period. Period, period, period. So I have been generous. I've been generous. That's a bougie way of saying generous, I guess. Generous. That's which means I have been super generous with my knowledge. And I think, again, that generosity has brought me a ton of abundance. Like I've spent at least, and this is not bragging, this is legit. Like I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on mentorship and coaching, and I give that for free to so many people online. I'm always posting content. I'm dedicated to helping others grow every single day. I coach for $30,000 a year and give them $300,000 in value. Like everything I know, I don't keep anything inside. I'm not trying to like screw people at all. Like for me, it's like the more I can give you, the more abundant we can be together. Like, let's have opportunities together. Let's grow together. Let's see if we can buy businesses together. Like, how can we grow? And that's just how I've always been. I don't believe in a lot of partnerships. I'm very cautious about partnerships because my parents' business, like it basically dissipated because of a partnership. So I have a little bit of PTSD on partnerships with, not knowing people. But the
Yeah.
people in my inner circle, my group of people, my Wealth Masters group who we personally chose, all of us, I feel really comfortable in having those conversations, in supporting growth and wealth and development and all the things. I believe that outside of our circle to some degree as well, but I'm very cautious about partnerships with, like,
Mhm.
especially monetary partnerships. But outside of that, giving information, that is not something I've ever kept close to me. If I find out something that can help you change your life, it's actually detrimental for me mentally and physically and emotionally for me not to help you or offer it to you. Like I really feel like that's why I'm here. I
Yeah.
really feel like it's part of who I am. And anybody I think that is listening or knows me, they know that if they need anything, I would be the first person at any time of day to give it to them. And like, I just hope that's what I'm remembered for.
Yeah.
That's what I'm here for. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, okay, so in your book, you talk about, well, you're a multi-million dollar mama.
Mhm.
And I know you personally very well as a mom and as an amazing mom. So, how has being a mother of four been integral to your identity as a successful
Yes.
businesswoman?
So I think that's where, we might differ a little bit, Rach, right? So
Mhm.
we talked about this before. But what I do every day is for my kids and my family and my husband and like our family unit. So I'm absolutely inspired by my kids. I love them greatly. I don't think that being a mom inspired me to be a great entrepreneur per se. I think I was kind of an entrepreneur before and really close to during when I turned into a mom. So there was a lot of issues with missing out on things, right? On like not being there. And so I spent the first 10 years of my kids' lives really not with them. I mean, I
Mhm.
was with them, they were in my Montessori school. I was with them daily, but spending like quality uninterrupted time, it was much more challenging. I had 4 kids under 6 And at that time, 4 pretty large schools. And every time I had a baby, people would laugh because they'd be like, oh, what new school's coming? And I would literally have a baby and a new baby school, right? So like I was always pregnant with twins, one outside and one inside. And so I did that for like, a good 10 years. And people, you get a lot of naysayers like, oh, look at her. She's always at work. She's not with her kids, blah, blah. Thankfully, we had a village. My mom, my grandparents, both parents were so involved with the help with our kids. The kids came to Montessori. We had a beautiful nanny who was my best friend, literally. She passed away of cancer a couple of years ago, but she was integral to our life and our kids' lives. She was another mom to them. I split my mom duties with her, honestly. When it would be Mother's Day, we would celebrate together. Literally, she never had any kids of her own. She was part of our life, like super. Yeah, I couldn't have done what we did without the village we had around us. And people will say, well, Julie, do you regret that? And honestly, I don't regret a minute of it. I don't, because I knew the purpose was all this was for my kids, right? And so even though it wasn't in the moment, maybe the exact way the typical motherhood should look like, I started to stop with the balance because people were like, you need work-life balance. That is ridiculous. There is no work-life balance, period. And I tell people that all the time. Like, I stress create harmony. I mean, we've talked about this on a podcast before, but I'm like, if you can have harmony in the times that you need it and you feel good, you have to relieve yourself of unrealistic expectations. You can't be all the things, right,
Yes.
So you can't be all the things and you can't do all the things, and we want to, and it's really hard and we try hard. And I was killing myself trying to do all the things to be the perfect mom. When I finally said like balance doesn't exist and I just need to have harmony in the times, like if it's one soccer game a month that I'm at, I'm there and I'm 100% and I take my phone and I put all the crap away and I'm there. I know moms that are at every single soccer game and they're shitty moms. So I don't care anymore. I'm like going to say it right here that, or, they're at every game and they're miss support, whatever, but then they go home and they treat their kids like poop and they never go on vacation with their
and
kids.
They're exhausted and complaining. Yes, I know. I get it.
Never, right? Like that was not my life. When I was with my kids, I was with my kids, and to see the fruition of what has come in the past 20 some years, because he's 20 now, Xavier, the turnaround and what I see in these kids was worth every single minute of this we did, So
absolutely.
I'm happy and fulfilled. And I think my kids are great humans and they have huge amounts of wonder and they're going to do really great things. And so it's possible to be a perfect mom. So just like stop. You just stop yourself before you make it.
I just talked about this I spoke for Chris Murray and the Child Care Success Academy. And that was one of the questions that I got asked because we are in the process of scaling big and fast right now too. And she said, how do you have balance with your family and your work? And I'm like, I don't have balance. Like, that's not a thing. Julie talks about harmony. I talk about boundaries, and I'm very strict on boundaries. Like, summer is sacred to us. Football season sacred to us. But no, I don't get to go to every track meet. I haven't even gone to any track meets this season. So it's just seasons. And but yeah, absolutely. But also you did it opposite I did. You started before and then had kids. I had kids and then started. So I missed a big chunk of their teen years and all of that kind of stuff.
We did the same thing, just kind of in a different timeline, right? And so and people are like, but you missed all the formative years. No, I didn't miss them. I wasn't there for every single minute of them, but I didn't miss that. Like I knew everything that I was like, I still to this day, I know my kids so intimately, it's scary, right? So, and when they have issues, guess who they come to? Mom or dad, right? Like they are 1000%, comfortable with us. They have a huge bond. We chat every night. We curl up, in bed and eat popcorn and, we do all the things. And
I know.
They have a huge bond with us. What I was going to just bring up quickly is return on life. And so that's
Yeah.
something that we've talked about that kind of goes along with like boundaries and balance and harmony and all these things. At the end of the day, your decisions can no longer at some point be based financially. So there gets to be a point where you're financially doing okay or well, or your targets are getting met. You can continually move that target, by the way. My first chapter is setting targets. And why I say that is start with the end in mind and continue to move that target if you want, right? You don't have to say a target doesn't have to be forever. You can meet that target and then just keep moving it. But at some point, the target and your return on investment has to be more than financial. So like now, I'm not going to leave my family for a $7,000, gig or a $4,000 talking event if I don't feel that that's going to bring return on life on my
Mhm.
family. So if
Right.
they're in school and there's nothing I'm missing, then yes. But if I have to like interrupt a vacation to do something, or I'm not doing it anymore because the return on life isn't worth it for us. And I used to get a lot of FOMO, like, well, I have to do that. I have to go there because like I don't want to miss out on that and blah, blah.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, like it has to be part of not only a financial return, like what is the time I'm spending? Who am I spending the time away from to do this? What am I saying yes to versus what am I saying no to? Is that worth it? Is this a return on investment for our life? Is this a good thing? Will this bring anything? Will this bring me closer to whatever goal I'm trying in the
Mhm.
future? If not, it's a no now. It's an
Yeah.
absolute no. So
And it's also for me about protecting your energy,
mhm,
because when you live a high performance life like we
mhm,
do, which requires a lot of mostly
energy.
mental, but mental and physical energy, we have to treat it like we're almost like an athlete, so an athlete, the football player, they're super strict about their off season. They're super strict about their days off. They have their recovery days. They have their planning days. They have their thinking days. And then they have their high performance days. I've had to readjust, like you said, just like that too. Is it worth the
Mhm.
return on life? Is it worth the return? And is my energy going to be protected so that it's strong and at high performance when I need it to be as well?
Yeah, and talking about that, I just kind of clicked something else I speak about in the book and we've spoken about, but how time is actually, it can be an asset, but it can be a liability as well. And we talk a lot about financial assets and liabilities and what really is a liability, right? What's really an asset. For us, an asset is something that doesn't an asset is something that cash flows for us, right? Where we used to think like a car and a house were an asset. If it's not cash flowing for you, we believe it's not. So our kids, even our thinking around assets and liability, around financial pieces, but time, all of that, right, has changed for us. We've had a mindset shift about money, time, physical things. So for us, like our kids will not buy a house. That won't be the first thing they buy. They will buy a unit, a fourplex. They'll live in one unit
Mhm.
and have other three units pay for them, right?
Yeah.
Those other units are going to pay for them with the net wealth they make. They're going to reinvest. My kids are 18 and 19 and already own their own. They own multifamily complexes, apartment complexes. Like it's just a way of changing your thinking too, as a parent and as a steward of their good financial literacy. Because our job too is keeping this wealth, right? Like, what's the
Yeah.
point if I have all this wealth and then my kids get it and then most wealth doesn't last past a generation. Like any book you'll read will tell you that, because they don't have the financial literacy. And most often if kids inherit all kinds of money and don't know what to do with it, it's gone because
Right.
they don't know all the things. And so just like time and figuring out what assets and liabilities are for your time, it's equally important to teach your kids all of these things, even the way that we live, time blocking, even everything about it, right? So it
Mhm.
just a larger picture, I think, of how we live our life, and how different it is maybe than mainstream. So I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
it makes it a bit challenging. So
Um, this isn't something that we talked about, but it is something that you and I have talked about, and maybe you can touch on it a little bit more, because we're talking about legacy wealth, and this is something that I literally learned this year from you. So I'm 44 years old and I just learned this. But can you talk a little bit about how we should use our active income to live off of, but then also invest into passive income, and then eventually use our passive income to have all of the extra things.
Yeah.
So,
So,
because
so what I kind of try to tell people and the kids as well, and I learned this later too. I wish this is why I'm saying all these things need to be learned early. Like these kids that get out of high school get $200,000, and I have an issue with college. So you're going to hear this from me, and you can either agree or don't agree to disagree. I don't care. I'm going to tell you
no,
how I
I
feel.
agree with you.
Yeah, you go to college, right? They get $200,000 in debt. Then they feel, oh, well, I graduated. Now I'm entitled to buy a house and I'm entitled to buy a car. And they just continually rack up this insurmountable amount of debt and this whole heaviness. This is how you start your life, in a shit ton of debt.
That's where the mental health issues came from.
Right? All the things that come from that, and just trying to be what you're not and trying to afford what you shouldn't be affording. We talk about your assets. So like we tell the kids, buy things that have cash flow. And then, either way, the big thing is you need an income, whether that is from a job, a business, a capital exit. I don't care where your income comes from, but you need income to start, period. The only way in life to create your own ceiling or to lift the ceiling of income is to continually add to it. So people say to me, well, Julie, I mean, I can only make 50 grand at my job. So how can I invest? How can I do this? I can barely make a living. That's your problem. Period.
Get a side hustle, get another job.
Saying, add other streams of revenue to your line. Listen, and we've talked about
Don't
this.
sit on the couch and watch TV all night. That's 4 hours a night. You could be doing something.
I talk to this about you all the time. If you have one income level, right? The only way to add income is to add other streams of income, whether that's passive or active. I don't care at this point. I'm just telling you, you need income. And then if you have expenses like let's just call it for a school or a house or anything, you're going to have utilities, you're going to have taxes, all those things you can't control. I don't care what you tell me. You can scrimp and scrounge and not buy a coffee. And at the end of the day, your net revenue is not changing. Those expenses are not going anywhere. Yes, you can lessen them a little bit, maybe 5% if you don't buy anything and live your life miserably. The only way, but it's true, the only way that you're going to change your lifestyle is by adding income. Because at the end of the day, the expenses are a lot of times out of our control. The only thing we can control is that top line, right? And I think people need to switch their mindset and mentality around, oh, I'm going to just keep chipping away at the expenses. In a business, the other reason why I say not to do that, that's in our book as well. The more you keep hacking down the expenses, the quality then becomes affected. Like you have to think about what you're doing. So if you need external strands of revenue or income, there's side hustles, there's getting a second job, there's going on Fiverr and becoming a contracted, whatever. You all have skills. But what I was going to say about the kids is that teaching them, or even us, right, as adults, a liability sometimes is disguised as an asset, right? So and we say buy assets to create passive income or cash flow. Use that passive income to buy the liabilities if you want. I still say not until you have enough of that passive income where you don't have to continually invest, or at least take a portion. So if you're making $100,000 a year through passive income somehow, with whatever you've set up that your assets are cash flowing you, out of that 100, I would say do the same rule I teach in the book, the 50-40-10 rule to the kids. Save 50, invest 40, spend 10, whatever, or give 10, whatever you want to do. Have a ratio that works for you, that you create continual reinvestment. If you're not continually reinvesting, you're maxing the ceiling. At the end of the day, you're maxing the ceiling. If you can only make $50,000 at your job, then you know what? If your expenses are 45, you're done. So either you add income to that, or you create income so that you're investing, so the investments become more income. And it's like cyclical, right? So you buy a fourplex, let's call it, the mortgage is $5,000. Those 3 people pay you $6,500. You have a net $1,500 after taxes and all the things you've paid for. You're living for free as well. Okay. You take the 1,500, you start to putting it in a high yield savings account. You keep dumping it in there. You take that high yield savings account when you get to a certain amount, and then you invest that amount into hopefully real estate or something that's going to be backed by an asset or something to give you cash flow. Then you take the cash flow and buy the Chanel purse or whatever the hell you want to buy. That's fine. But
Cash flowing real estate, though, not buying a bigger, more expensive house.
Right. That's
that's where I think people get stuck, is that maybe you $50,000, let's pretend you make 50 or even 40,000, whatever. You can still get side flows of income, like you're saying, increase your income streams, and then save that up to invest in other things that are going to make you more money. That's where I didn't know this. I didn't do this for the first 40 years of my life, other than my business. I've always been reinvesting in my business. So that's, I think, a super, super huge, important tip that I learned from you, and I want to learn more about from your book when I read it. But
and there's also a way here to help your kids learn that. I mean, so there's a lot of things, lots of chapters in the books, about 14. We're getting to the top of the hour, so just want to do a health, wealth, and happiness tip at the end of this, because people don't like to watch more than an hour, and I understand. So lots of things. If you want, you can buy it anywhere that they sell books, Amazon, Barnes, all the places. It's, a $20 to $30 investment that I'm sure somewhere in that book, you'll find a $20 to $30 nugget that will help you save a lot more money than that, or make more money than that. I'm doing a shameless plug, but mostly because I need you to have the information to change your life. I don't care whether the book sells. I care that you get the information. So that's the first and foremost, I guess. And the last thing, health, wealth, and happiness. Well, I think we've given you a lot of what's happiness. I think we've touched on as well, Rachel. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add, but I think health, wealth, and happiness. I think there's lots of tips in this book. And
we talked about it before we got on before we pushed record. I just think for happiness for both of us, and we've probably talked about this on the podcast before, but finding your right and tight circle and making sure that your values align with the people that you are aligned with. And it's not just you, but you and your spouse. Like Julie said, our husbands are planning hunting trips all the time together and like doing, this crazy whatever, but it makes my life happier. It makes me happier knowing he's happy, and it makes our family happier because, we have this. So finding your right and tight circle is very important. And if the people that you are with are not right and tight, it's okay to love the time you spent with them and to let them go. It's okay.
Yeah. Sometimes in life, you need to trade up. I mean, all leases at some point become due and all things expire. I mean, and unfortunately, I hate to treat it as such, but there really is a time and a place for you to just make some changes. It's not okay, and it's not self-respect for you to stay in situations that are not meant for you any longer, and you're worthy. And so know that you're worthy and make those changes to believe that you're worthy and to prove to yourself that you're ready for the next level. That's part and parcel of owning a business, being a mom. I mean, you have to protect your assets and your liabilities, right? At the end of the day, all of those things count. And so, like Rachel said, sometimes you just need to make those changes, and sometimes it's sooner than later. And sometimes you feel bad making them. I don't like leaving people behind, but I'll tell you that when I've hung on to the wrong situations, it really has hurt us as a family, in my business, in all the things. So take care. Have an amazing night. We love you. And that's it for today, guys. Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.